Welcome to another episode of the Muckin Around podcast with me, Tom from Springbridge. And today we've got a great guest on today, and it's Lara from Objective IT. And that company specialises in doing databases and basically working with businesses to help them with their IT and infrastructure and stuff like that. Well, Lara can probably explain it a lot better than me, actually, to be honest with you, with what you guys do. So did you want to give us a start by sort of just giving us a bit of background of what your company does?
Yeah, so we do software development and data analytics. And what that means is we look at how businesses' processes work, help them try and order, automate and make best use of their data, whether that's via a database with a web front end or a machine learning AI model to increase value.
Do you mind us, how did we, because we sort of got together as a company, two companies together. I think we were actually introduced by our turf supplier, weren't we, I think, at the time, back about, 4 years ago, something like that?
COVID, yeah.
Yeah, during COVID, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And I think we were really busy with our, we had a lot of customers coming through, and we were struggling. We were using
calendars.
That's right. We were using a Sage account system, which we still use, but we were using that for pretty much everything, from putting the sales order on the system to then we would have to take the orders out of Sage, put that into a Google Calendar, manually route it all, and then put it back into Sage.
Colours.
Lots.
Yeah.
Remember, that's right. And it was very manual. The drivers all had delivery tickets. And I think from memory, we started where the first goal, I think, was to get rid of the paper delivery tickets and try and get drivers and that were doing deliveries using the tablet. And then I realized at that point that it was going to be, you can't have that without the rest of it. And then it all had that's how we started, really, wasn't it, I think?
I remember it started as one phase and then it rolled on a bit, and it was everything by the time you launched.
Exactly. I think the initial sort of setup took about probably about 2 years, would you say, in the making, to sort of before we could actually start using any sort of the go live thing?
You're probably one of our longest customers in that regard, because you realised you wanted everything and to launch it as one whole process rather than have that mismatch in between of areas, whereas lots of businesses will do a phase one and work in the old way alongside for a while. But I think it was 2 years roughly. 2
years. I think I had a habit of just sort of, instead of going live, keep adding more and more features that had to be tested and had to be looked at, didn't I? I think, which was probably I guess, well,
it got you your start to end.
It did. It got, exactly. And now we're at a point now where we're heavily reliant on it. I mean, as in, it would be unimaginable to sort of go back to a system like we had. I just don't think we could, it'd be so inefficient to go back to another system. So that's kind of that's kind of how we got going, really, wasn't it? One of the questions here, it says, is what are the sort of the primary goals of Springbridge and Objective to building the system? Would you agree it's like a lack of, getting rid of sort of wastage within a business, I think, is by using data? Or
I always like to say I like to make people's lives easier, which is a very loose term, but it should make your processes smoother, more efficient. It should make it a lot clearer for you to spot how you're doing, when there's a problem, etc. And then also on the tail end of it, to actually report on how much money you've made, how much has gone wrong, how much has gone right, etc.
Yeah, I mean, that's another thing that you guys have done actually as well, is which is another expansion of the thing. It's not just about building a system that you can enter the sales orders and you can route the lorries. It was about the reporting side of things as well, which we can analyze where our deliveries are being delivered, how quickly they're being delivered, what our stock levels should be, and all of that kind of stuff. And that was another sort of, from my point of view, another arsenal that I could use to improve the efficiency within the business, I think, as well.
Because you've got that central hub of all your information, and whether that's displayed to you at the end of the process by dashboard that you can look at, or whether that's delivering it on a mobile app to a driver when he actually needs it. Yeah. It's all a database in the middle.
Yeah. So what sort of other companies do you deal with? Do you deal with you must see an awful lot of widespread. Do you? Yeah. What sort of other things do you sort of deal with apart from turf and topsoil and muck away and that kind of thing?
Companies in construction, we've got companies in manufacturing. We had quite a cluster of companies in asbestos at one point. It's heavy compliance is often quite common for us because they're the ones that need the data really securely to report on. Marketing companies.
Okay. Yeah.
Complete array.
Is it sort of adding sort of customer lists and product lists? Is it or is it like building? Could it be like building?
So, quote and job systems is always a really common one. Yeah, and they're always the ones that, like you said, they really transform the business. So they're, we shouldn't say it, but our favourite, and because you can see the impact. But we've done all sorts from. We built a system for a really large company in construction that literally was a calendar system essentially that looked at their diaries and said when the executives were going to be in the same country or location, just so they could meet.
Right. Oh, really?
So
okay.
That's it's not as transformative, but it does. There's all sorts of different systems.
Do you have a large team at your office, or do you use sort of resources that are out there in the world to tap into, or is it a bit of both? Or
so we've got a team of 16 in Essex, and we don't use external consultants.
Oh, don't you? Okay.
No, we do have one person in Sofia. So she worked Bulgaria. She worked for a client of ours, and she was brilliant. Yeah. On the data AI side, and she wanted to move back to Sofia, start a family, so we hired her. And set up an office just for her there.
Oh, great. Okay.
Yeah. She's still with us, I think, 8 years later.
Oh, okay. Cool. Yeah. And is it the team mainly? Is it made up of like sort of coders and developers and or a general mix of people?
Yeah.
Or?
Basically, everyone is technical, and then we, as a business, outsource our marketing and stuff.
Would you find it challenging sort of finding skilled people in that sector? Is that one of your sort of biggest challenges?
Yes. And my sister says I'm ruthless, actually, because in job interviews I ask developers, like, what's the rate of VAT and what's your favourite story in the news at the moment and stuff. Because for us, you can find a lot of people that can code well. Yeah. But all our staff have to be customer facing because we're such a small team, and our value, I suppose, is you're talking to the technical people that can actually do the job. Yes, yeah. So to find the right person that has the right people skills and organisation level to actually not forget things and put them in systems, etc., can be tricky.
It's interesting that you say that, like, you know, like the customer is sort of speaking to the developer, because I would say I've learned an awful, you know, I mean, obviously I'm not a developer, and obviously I wouldn't probably get a job in your company, but like, you know, I've learned an awful lot about the structure of how things work just by working with you guys, rather than when I want something made, you guys, we sit down and we plan it together. You don't just go, yeah, I'll do that, and then come back to me like in 6 months time and it's all made, but it's not made how I wanted it. It's made specifically.
It's like building a house. If you're involved, you're building yourself a brand new house and you're involved with it alongside the builders, you're going to know where the stop clock is, and you're going to know not to drill in that wall because there's a wire behind it, because you've seen the process in the build up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And even like sort of, I've started to view data as sort of cross, you know, like having lots of lists and then things like talking to each other, and like and that like when you want that, you need that, then you need that, then you need that, and it's basically joint. It's a bit like a big matrix of joining the dots, really. Like in my head is how I see it.
Well, that is how it is.
That's sort of the skill that you guys sort of bring to the table, really. Yeah, I mean, obviously at the moment we use it for the sales and the we use it right through from sales to planning to doing our, you know, integrating with Sage and our accounting system and stuff like that. What sort of stuff do you think that we can, you know, work together with and look forward to having, like, in the future? You know, like what are you seeing on your side of things that's quite cool at the moment?
Possibilities are endless, but I don't know if it would work for you. You tell me if I'm wrong, but one cool thing we've done lately is So we've got a customer who's got people out on site all over the place.
Yeah.
And they buy a very specific type of product.
Okay.
And then sell it off. And they use voice notes, and then they come back and type it all up.
Okay.
So we're doing work to turn the voice note into database entries.
Right, okay.
Using AI to extract, like a language model, to extract what they're saying and match it to the product IDs.
Okay, yeah.
And then it inputs it in the database, which then saves them a big chunk of admin. They record themselves, they do it anyway, and then we're just turning their words into actual database entries, so someone's not sitting there having to type it.
Yeah, that's a big saving.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm trying to think how that would work. I mean,
I don't know if that would work for you, but it's quite it's a thing. People use their voice. You don't realise how much you discuss, talk.
Well, it would be quite, I mean, I would see that, something like that being useful, where when you're doing like phone recordings and things like that, and when you're having a conversation with the customer, so that the conversation is transparent to, you know, like, and what was said was, you know, both the customer and ourselves are all on the same page as to what the customer wanted, you know, like, so like, I guess you could record, you know, just in a basic example, like you could record a sales call, and then you could send the customer sort of, you know, the customer would have the option, a summary of what the call was discussed and on the call. And then they say, well, you know, I ordered 100 meters of turf. And then in the summary, it said they ordered 200 meters of turf. It's like they could look back at what they actually said and realize that maybe they'd made a mistake, or maybe we made a mistake on the other side. We might look back at it and go, oh, you know, the customer said 200 and we put 100 on there, you know, and that would alleviate a lot of those problems, to be fair.
And then another one's like cash flow forecasting, sales forecasting. That's very big at the moment.
Yeah.
The more predictive forecasting businesses can do, we're just finding more and more common.
I think that's where, because obviously what the software that you're developing has uses for everybody within the business. I mean, even from a salesperson, like taking the sale on the phone, if the way your software is laid out on the screen for them, so it's nice and simple for them to put the thing in to make sure that the price is coming up correctly, that the products are all listed. And I think me as a director of the company, like that's one thing that I've found very beneficial from my point of view, is things like looking at historical data, cash flow forecasting. And you worked a little bit with Power BI, which is a Microsoft product, didn't we? And dashboard tool, which gave me on our Sage 200 system with all the accounts, it gave me a big insight into what our that
plugs together your database, your process one, and your accounts, and brings it into one dashboard.
Yeah, exactly. So I can see what our, you know, how much we've sold, how much we, you know, what monies are due to be paid in, what monies are due to be paid out, and stuff like that. And I think from my point of view, that helps me like sort of sleep a bit better at night, because I'm not kind of guessing. You know, a few years ago, I would say I would have been running the business on more of a feel, you know, like, because I didn't necessarily have those numbers as easily. You know, you'd have to wait for the accountant to kind of tell you those numbers at the end of the year. You'd end up like sort of having a meeting with the accountant at the end of the year, and he'd be going, and you'd just be thinking, well, I hope the figures that he puts in front of me are the figures that I kind of had in my head, you know, because otherwise we're in trouble here, you know, like, and actually now like these figures are coming at me on a daily or a weekly or a monthly basis. And sort of when we sit down with the accountant at the end of the year, it's like, well, he's sort of, you know, I know that my estimate of that figure was the same as what the accountant has come up with.
Insight.
Yeah. And I think you can plan a business much more based off that, can't you? Because like you know, especially if you've got a couple of years of historical data. And I mean, our business is growing quite, you know, every year it's growing at a, you know, it's not growing like a ridiculous pace, but it's growing at a steady pace, you know. And so year on year, you can't keep changing the, you know, the figures don't necessarily relate to last year, but they do. A lot of the figures do, to be honest.
And when you break them down as well, you can see how much you're for example, if you're growing, how much your revenues increase versus your costs, and you can still see the proportions as time goes on.
Exactly.
And the breakdown of products, and know that this product is not growing at all, and this one is really showing all our growth.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I mean, with your, with some of the sort of staff that I've worked with in your company, they seem to have a good understanding of what I need. Is that something that you train?
The whole point, yeah.
But how do you get that because obviously somebody that's coming out of university might be really good at coding, but they wouldn't know how to run a business. So not that they're running a business, but they need to have an understanding of what the director in the business.
They have to always ask why, take the time to actually listen, and then challenge if we think something's not necessarily the best way of doing something.
Yeah.
Because I think a trap you can fall into, and you see this with other businesses and customers that have potentially come to us from other people, is not that the customer's not always right, but the customer doesn't necessarily know the most logical way to do things.
Correct.
And there might be a logical way, but you need to always stop and say, why are you doing that, Tom?
Yes.
What's the point of that? And then you might explain it, and we'll then get it. Or you might explain it and we'll say, well, that is not particularly efficient. What about this way?
Yes. Yeah.
That's the part, I think, that really adds the value.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I've noticed it even in certain things that I've asked you guys to do. And like, I've thought like, nothing major, but like I've sort of, we've built something up in a certain way. And then in like a year's time, you think, oh, if only I'd sort of started with a different, if only I'd started from that point, not that point, then it would, it would have been easier. But then there's normally a flip side to that, whereas like, it's it's advantageous to build it in a,
And if you question absolutely everything all the time, you'd never get anything built.
Well, that's the other thing.
It's the balance.
That's the other thing. Yeah, exactly. That's the other thing. If you keep questioning, because I've done that before. You've questioned it, and you thought, well, actually, we're going to have to pick one of these routes.
And our customers wouldn't like us very much either.
No. And do you find that a lot of people that come to you know what they want, or do you have to help them as well, or like, or do you find a lot of...
different? So yeah, you get the back of a fag packet type people that have a few things written out and they know what problem they're trying to solve or what opportunity they want to go into, and they're really fun, and you get to map it out. Like, we've got colourful post-it notes in the office to manually map out processes, etc. When is some people, they will have had systems before, or they know where they want it and exactly what they want it to do. And then it's normally a different technical challenge, right? So that's more like the technical challenge, and the processes one's more mapping the processes, and people, they know how their business works. Their business has worked well for 30 years.
Yeah.
They don't want to fit their business to another way.
Yeah.
So it's figuring out how we then digitalise their process to keep their way of working the way their customers like, but make it a bit more efficient.
Do you find that because obviously, like, we're not we had, before we got in touch with you guys, we had no sort of understanding of software or anything like that. Like, do you find that a lot of businesses and people that are asking you to do stuff, they don't understand? You have to guide them. They don't have, or can it be awkward? Like, as in, like, you sort of almost confrontational with them. Like, as in, like, you say, look, you really are doing this the wrong way here. Like, you need to think like this, and you have to kind of.
Occasionally. But not too much. I think as long as you explain, and we get the database up and show them, like, this is kept in this table, this is kept in this table. We can't do it just like that, because there's a process in the middle, and people then start to understand. And you just have to explain along the way, this is how it works.
I guess most people would, if they've got their business to a point where they're developing, they need to develop software, like, that isn't an off-the-shelf product that you can buy, like like a Sage 50 or whatever it might be. If you're at a point where you're having to develop your own software, you probably have done a lot of research into seeing if you could buy something beforehand, I would imagine. And if there, and if you can't find what you want, there's a good chance you know what you want because you've done your research.
Exactly.
And,
yeah.
So by the time they get to actually inquiring with you guys, then it's they have a good understanding of what they actually need, which helps you quite a lot, really.
And we talk to people, and we'll talk to them, and they'll consider us as an option alongside a like off the shelf piece of software, so they can do their cost analysis and stuff.
I want to try and get the customer service. That's one of the big pushes that I want to see, is like getting the customer more involved, like automated, so that the customer, you know, a bit more of an Amazon style. I mean, like sort of delivery, getting, copying some of the big players, really, like in terms of like getting, customers getting accurate ETAs and getting, clear pictures of when the goods are sort of coming, and as well as, I suppose, it's a never ending thing. It's like, as well as doing that, I think we've seen a big, just even the simplest of things, I think we found that have made a big difference is like attaching, something that when you start out in business, you think, well, that's surely a simple problem to solve, but actually it's not. Like just getting a proof of delivery ticket attached to the correct invoice. Yeah. It seems really simple to do something like that, but like, and it you think, well, why would that be difficult? But with all the other processes that link that proof of delivery ticket to that invoice and sending it that at the right time to the right person, there's a lot of rules and things like that need to be followed. Do you have a lot of like do you have the systems that you work with? Do you have like a lot of to keep rules in the right order and stuff like that? That's obviously quite challenging, isn't it? Like
and important because
how do you cope with like sort of making sure that rules are entered and stuff in the right way, like,
and not too many rules?
Yes,
is the other thing, because you can go too far down there. But for example, you're assigning to lorries.
Yes,
there are, I would not call them necessarily rules as much in some areas of it. There's suggestions. So like it would still let you load this load onto this lorry, but it would display it in red to show you that's probably not the best idea. But if you wanted to, you could.
Yeah.
Because you might need to.
Yes.
Whereas on a day where, I don't know, all your lorries got blocked in at the yard, you would need to get it out on the other one.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's that process of trying to figure out what the rules are. So I can't fit this on that, so you just can't do it. I could fit this on that, but it's not the way I want to work. So you have it not hard no, it's a soft no. And
so do you? Because obviously, like our own database is built on rules, and that has to be done before that, and that has to be done before that.
Yeah.
You then must have your own like database of rules that stores the rules for our database.
Well,
is that how it works?
It's written in the code, so all our developers can go and read the rules, essentially. Yeah, and also a lot of it, the rule will be creating the data.
Right.
So you can't do the next step because you wouldn't have the data to do the next step. For example, if you're doing a quote, you would have a quote figure. When that quote became a job, you'd have a job figure, and you couldn't invoice unless you had the job figure. So you can invoice a quote. It's a simple explanation, but
yeah. No, I see what you're saying. Yeah. So,
but we do have to write down a lot as well because
because like that's what. And because I always think like, how do you? I suppose you would go back in if you wanted to like say amend something from what was written like a year ago. Do you find it hard? Is it challenging for people to go back and understand the rules that somebody else has written? Do you ever have that problem, or is it not really?
Not really, to be honest. It's
because sometimes. We
from the front end, because you can't see what's going on in the back end. But when you have the database attached as it's more of a window into it.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Because sometimes I look at it and I think, oh, well, that button's obsolete now. Like we've made a new button, so we don't need that button anymore. And then, but actually, it's like I'll be like, oh, just get rid of that button, and then you guys will be like, no, don't get rid of that button because that button's like a kingpin for everything.
The harder thing to keep track of is the why.
Right. Yeah.
So we might put a rule in. You can see why. You can see what the rule is and what it's doing, but trying to remember why it was put in is the bit that's best to keep track of.
Because, is that recorded or like not really? Like
yes, so we'd have to go back to the task, and then we'll have in the task what it was and why it was requested.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So,
but it's always you might not think it was important what it was requested, so do you always write it down is the other question. But
yeah, exactly. Yeah. I was thinking the other day, I was because I've started using ChatGPT a lot to as you know, I'm sure a lot of people have, about just general stuff, really, just helping me. Yeah, just have a chat. Yeah, just helping me to like sort of write I've used it for everything. I've used it to help me write sort of HR letters, through to helping me work out a spreadsheet that my accountant might have sent me or something like that. I don't think it's going to change the... I think it's a tool. I think people, it's a tool rather than a replacement of somebody's job. Do you agree with that? Or do you think, do you see that jobs are going to actually become obsolete, or how do you see the future going with this sort of technology coming
for example, call centres, customer complaints, customer queries? I could see that being quite swallowed by that.
Yeah. Because
for example, when you're on the phone to your insurance company, do you really need to speak to a human? Could you have a conversation with a human voice?
Yeah.
Probably not.
Yes, exactly.
And then the 1 or 2 out of 100 people that do need to speak to a human would get through to a human.
Yes, yeah.
So
I suppose,
and same for email. Like you've got someone.
I suppose when you're calling a company, like in that example of an insurance company, are you the person that you're speaking to? You're, as you say, you're interested in the information that person's giving you, not necessarily that person has no real understanding of your circumstances at the point when they answered the call.
No, yeah.
So they could only go into a database to look up your circumstances. So you're right, I suppose, in that respect, that like it doesn't matter if it's a human being or is it a chatbot.
Because all they're doing is looking at the same data. And same for, you've got a customer emailing you, they're not happy with their delivery. Does that need to be a human that replies, or is there a set reply you have that sends out? I'm probably too far, but I think that's how bigger businesses will use it before. If your fashion, if you're ordering a pair of trousers, they're not going to care enough to reply to you personally on that regard. If it's a high ticket item, then you would expect that. And I think we will naturally all sort of know the higher the value or the more important something is, you're actually more likely to speak to someone. In the fast goods, you're just are being more and more and more automated, much like e-commerce took over.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so like so it started like, people weren't going into the shop anymore, they were going to websites, and now it's like they're not even speaking to someone, they're just
and when you go to the shop now, you're not often speaking to someone, you're just paying at a self-serve till.
That's true. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I suppose that could happen in next sort of 4 or 5 years. I should imagine it's probably going to start to you'll start, I suppose you'll see the larger companies sort of in sort of
I went to an insurance company in London that were already looking into the call centre.
Were they?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, the conversation I have at home with ChatGPT shows me that the technology is there to do it, so it's just a case of I think people
generally prefer it than shouting out your name to a automated voice and keying in your stuff. It probably would feel more natural.
Yeah, and I know there's an argument, a lot of people are like, it's not the same as talking to a human being, but like, I've spoken to a few human beings on the end of the phone that have no idea what they're doing as well. So, like, it swings and roundabouts, isn't it, really? There are some people who, have been in a job 20 years. They know in the ins and outs of that job. They're brilliant at their job. And,
and they're the ones that should be there to deal with
the bigger problems. Yeah. But then there's also people in their job that literally don't they turn up. They don't care about their job. They don't care about the customer. They try and sort of hide within the company or whatever. And, that's from a customer's point of view. They're the ones that you really if you can replace that with a chatbot, well, then I suppose that's moving. That is just the way of the world. I suppose that's just progress, isn't it? Really, I suppose, to be fair. And then those people, I do wonder what will there be? Because there's always that sort of argument. Well, there's going to be a lot of unemployed people in the world, but is that the case, or will these people? Will these people end up finding other roles within the business? And I think so, I think they'll find other things to do, because if you look at history and you look at any time new technologies come out, it hasn't meant a job short. It hasn't meant people. There's always been other avenues that people can work in and do.
Yeah, and I don't think large language models like that are going to be necessarily the most used in the future. I think it'll be the more task-based, smaller models that will be
What would be like an example of
like
that,
the voice note?
Like the voice, yeah.
Yeah, like there's small specific models for things that just cause a problem or just cause a delay or an inefficiency that can be fixed with something. I think you're going to have, like I said, retail probably will go much further on automation than most businesses in your sector.
Yeah.
Or mine, although we're technical, we're quite people-based. The whole business, everybody we speak to is different. We have to talk to everyone.
Yeah.
We couldn't replace ourselves. You could probably replace more coding, etc. over time, but you couldn't replace the actual understanding part. So, but task-based AI, I think, will be a lot more important for those specific things.
Yeah. Do you think that it will bring the cost down of development and of the software development, like with the sort of language models and stuff? Do you think that will, because like you say, finding skilled developers is it's a niche kind of job role, isn't it? Really, it's quite hard to find these people.
Potentially, it's how I think of it as volume. So I think how much more could a developer do over time will expand.
Yes.
And that's what I hope. So I would still say you need the technical skills, which is what costs the money.
Yes, yeah.
But their productivity is what we as a business should be focusing on.
That's what you need to. Yeah, exactly. And so you're superpowering the developer to do more of the clever stuff.
It's like lorry routing for you. How many deliveries can a lorry do in a day? And efficiency that way. It's
exactly.
For us, how much can a developer knock out in a day is.
Well, if you said to me that you could get a lorry that could hold double the amount of bulk bags that my current lorry holds, then obviously that lorry is going to presumably deliver double the amount of bulk bags in a day that they could have otherwise done, which is double the productivity of that lorry.
And then for us, there's if there's complications or issues, it's like traffic for you. It slows you down.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I was thinking what would be useful for us as a business to sort of what would be our next sort of project to work on. Really, that would be what would generate for us as a business, what would reduce the wastage within our business, but also increase the customer service as well. What would be what would be the next sort of thing, really? And the routing of the lorries, I think, is a big project that we're doing at the moment, isn't it? So we're basically trying to get our delivery schedule down, I would say, to within a 15-minute to sort of accuracy, because at the moment our deliveries are, when our deliveries go out, they're quite the driver has a day's work to do, but we can narrow it down to a couple of hours, but we haven't got all the information at our disposal to narrow the delivery times down to say 15 minutes. I mean, half an hour maybe, But
you do already have GPS and stuff, so you do have the information. It's just not in a fashion that's usable.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, we've got the information, and then you guys are basically putting it together so that we can. And that's one thing I'm really excited about, is when we go live with some of the stuff that we've been working on there, with sort of integrating our system with Google Maps, and then I think integrating it with our tracker for the lorries and stuff, so that we can give accurate ETAs. I think that will make a, traffic as well, because obviously we're getting the traffic information from Google Maps. I'm really hoping that will reduce massively the amount of times that a customer would need to ring us for like an ETA, or the number of times that a delivery goes wrong, should be minimal, because like it should, the information is all there. And I think that's something that I'm quite looking forward to sort of getting out. And that's actually nearly finished now, I think, to be fair.
And from customer service, is when you're at home waiting all day for a delivery, it is frustrating, and that if it's in this time period, you can pop out to the shops and your customers will just be so much happier because that's something you're offering that other people aren't. And,
exactly. And I do think that there's a lot of sectors out there that are, what we're building it's bespoke to our business. I mean, it's not like a new idea or a new concept. It's like we're just, it's obviously like, DHL and Amazon and UPS will have all these things, but what they have wouldn't directly work for us because we're a smaller business and everything else. But I do think that we're ahead of the curve a little bit with that. Like, I think
people forget that different industries have different levels of advancements in different areas of their businesses, and there will be things that your industry does a lot more and has a lot more control of than another business won't, and vice versa. And that's the advantage of working cross sector, is you can see what different people are doing and bring ideas, and it doesn't have to be a really big idea to really leap a business forward.
It's true. I mean, in our industry, I would say a lot of the people that have started businesses or running businesses in our industry are very focused on the hands-on. They're very hands-on. So like, they'd be a director that started a business, may have started out as a lorry driver or a digger driver, and then they've sort of, then they've sort of progressed and thought, well, I'm going to start my own business. And so their focus has always been on sort of the practical side of the business, whereas I don't think, there's not many businesses in our sector that are focused on the data and the software side, so that's why I'm hoping that will, give us an advantage that other companies don't have.
It's like when you start a business, and I had a conversation about artists about this. As an artist, if you're going to start a business, it's quite a common thing they do, but they're so focused on the creative. Same in construction. You might be an electrician, you want to start your business. The first barrier is actually understanding finances and profit and stuff. So that's like the first level, and then you think about it more, you collect more data, etc., and then you start using that, and then it's like the evolution or the steps of business, I think.
Exactly. I know what you mean. And it's but and I see, and I mean, I see a lot of other businesses, like, I mean, just so like another topsoil company, for example, their way of making the business more efficient would, I mean, you've got to do all of this anyway. You can't, I'm not saying that we ignore this side of things, but like they would be very, very, very focused on, say, increasing the productivity of the machinery, increasing the productivity of the screener, making sure that the lorry isn't broken down as much and stuff like that. And while they're sort of so focused on that, they've just completely ignored the fact that all of their sales and purchases and everything are done on pen and paper. It's taking them 3 weeks to send an invoice. It's taking them another 6 months to get paid because they were so slow sending their invoices out. The customers, they themselves are unsure if what goods were delivered at what time because they didn't have an app to take the pictures and stuff like that. And I think if we can, you've got to make every area of your business has got to become efficient, hasn't it? You can't just ignore, and concentrate on one certain thing. But if we can concentrate on the software side of things as well as the other stuff, that will certainly sort of
and data on that side would be useful. It's all around.
Do you sometimes I worry that, like, as well, I mean, just talking about that, like, you have to be careful as well that you don't run a business based purely on numbers as well, because that like that can be
you can focus too much. it's a bit of an overused term, but data driven.
Yes.
So data should drive your decisions, but the ideas need to actually come from you.
Yes, exactly.
Data would have never told you to start a podcast, and data may have told you to concrete over your yard, but it would have been hard to ever collect that data in the first place. So you do need to have the decision.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. It's like sometimes I look at, like, you know, you could look at your, you know, on a profit and loss, a monthly profit and loss report. You could look at like the materials that you purchased in a month, and you'd see the figure, and the figure's telling you that you've spent on that. It doesn't tell you where the wastage is. It doesn't say if there is any wastage. You know, it tells you that was, you know, that's what you've inherently spent for the last 6 months, but it doesn't tell you that actually, like, you know, someone was loading 3 ton and charging for 2 ton because the weighing scales were out, or you know. So
and you need that decision to work out what data you actually need to start with.
Yes.
So data informs you, but it's not the be all and end all.
Yeah.
And it's subjective, because if you've only got one view of something, one bit of data, you're not going to make the right decision. So you do need to have a brain as well.
Yeah. And a brain, and I think have a almost like a seat of your pants kind of feel for a business as well. Like, I think, like, you know, you need to, you know, like when I was walking around the yard this morning, you know, I was sort of looking around and seeing what everybody was doing and stuff like that, and then you spot things and you're like, oh, you know, that's you know, that's good, that's bad, that, you know, like you know, if you're sitting and looking at a spreadsheet all day, you're not going to pick up on those important sort of facts as well. Yeah. No, exactly. Yeah. Is there anything else that you sort of can think of that we should be sort of integrating at the minute, or like you know, should we planning on doing, or do you think you know, like in the next sort of few years, any other sort of?
What about your marketing side? So making better use of marketing stats, etc., and profiling customers to sell more.
Yeah, that's that. Yeah, is that where you're seeing quite a big increase? Then is it like? And
yeah, it's something we've been doing for a while. So like building up the customer profile, and for example, one customer, we literally store their customer web browsing data when they're anonymous. Then when they buy, you get their who they are.
Right, okay.
And then you can match what they've browsed at in the past, what they're browsing at going forward. You can see what they're opening on emails, what they're actually buying. So should you be doing, it's a silly example, but more tips on planting your flower pots, which might seem a trivial thing, but if that thing on planting your flower pots is what interests the director of a big company to then use you for all his haulage, is that what's keeping in the mind? And is he clicking on this thing even though it's totally unrelated to what he actually buys off you?
Yes. Yeah.
Because you're just, it's like the EasyJet thing of like, they send you 10 million emails. They know you're not reading them, but when you go to book a flight, you think of them because you've had their 10 million emails in your inbox.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, I mean, one of the problems that we've always faced, I think, as a business is we have a very large customer base of
and all different range.
The range. I mean, the range is literally pretty much anyone and everyone, from a private individual up to a £200 million turnover construction company, and everyone, and then a small landscaper, or, you know, someone with 2 or 3 vans doing a private job, or, you know, a private house, whatever, and trying to market correctly in that respect. I mean, there is an argument that you know, maybe as a business that we should try and sort of focus on a sector more, but I don't, you know, I think that's one of our strengths, is the fact
we get the same, you know, we like, it's interesting, it keeps your staff longer because it's interesting for us. It's, you get other ideas, you hear more info, etc. It's not everyone needs to. So sometimes it is really useful to
just channel into one.
But
I mean, we had it during sort of, you know, during the COVID pandemic. That was one of the things that really kept us going was our large customer base, because when all the construction sites sort of shut down, you know, a lot of the big companies shut down and people were at home and everything else. The online store that we had, which was supplying to retail customers and, you know, people at home and stuff like that, went through the roof.
And
you know,
everyone
because
did their gardens.
Yeah, and everyone did their garden. So we you know, that, and had we have been in a position where we said, you know, do you know what, we're not gonna do online sales, we're gonna shut that part down, we're just gonna concentrate on bulk supplies to, you know, builders merchants or to big construction sites, and we're not going to take an order less than £5,000 or something, you know, like we're not in that market, like that would have been a problem for us, you know. But the fact that and you know, there are a lot of businesses that do supply, you know, I think it comes down to quantity and order value as well, like, you know, my dad, when he started the business, he always said, like, you know, if somebody wants to use you, you know, you should, you know, if they want to buy your product, you should make it available for them to buy. So that's kind of,
and you've got core products is the other thing to remember. You're not adding on plant pots, or that's the other thing is you're quite wide on the customer thing, but you're not
wide on the product. We're not trying
you're wide on the product you want to sell, but you're not trying to add on bits and bobs.
That's true.
Which is what you need to do if you then go specific on the customer.
Yes. Yeah. That's very true, actually. Like, yeah, if you were to,
like, we don't do IT infrastructure. We wouldn't sort your internet out.
Yes.
That's not our area.
Yes, exactly.
And,
we don't have a stock of wheelbarrows, and when someone buys a bag of topsoil, they can buy a wheelbarrow from us as well. We just want to sell them the core product, but we don't care who we sell it to.
Exactly.
That makes sense, actually. Yeah. And I guess that's where the database, as you say, from the marketing point of view, would, because different customers do need different marketing quite significantly. I mean, it's not,
and it's how you keep in touch with a customer, but your director of big business is also a homeowner, probably.
Yes.
And probably has a garden. And how do you, the evolution of that person that might buy for you just a bag of topsoil for doing up his garden, or wants to get into composting or whatever, and he has a really good experience, then how do you then channel him into becoming and make sure that they're aware customer?
that you're not just there for their private garden, you're also there for their, you know, for their business, that, like,
and vice versa.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And do you think that's where
data can really help?
Yes.
And the fact that you already have their email because they're buying off you, and if they're still buying off you, they should quite like you. So they're a more receptive audience when you're trying to target at them.
So do you see a time where, for example, you know, let's say we've got like 50,000 customers on our database, and it's a bit of a mess, like, you know, like, as in, like, you know, some of the customers are classified wrongly on our database, so, like, you know, and, you know, if I was to employ someone to look at my database and clean it up,
that's a task specific model. So we literally have built a B2B B2C classification model for a customer, so you can be B2B or B2C or both, and it is based on what they're browsing on the internet, on your website, what emails they're opening from you, what products they've bought, and you can tag them as B2B, B2C or both, and they can get the different types of comms. So it looks at the order history, it looks all the, right down to your website. So say someone, you've emailed someone that their haulage is happening, blah blah, there's their invoice, whatever, and then at the bottom you've got your banner that's like, it's whatever season. I'm not the best gardener. Don't forget to order this type of topsoil for your garden, and they've clicked on it, so you now know they're also an interested consumer.
Right. Okay.
And then they might not use you on the business side again for another 6 months, but as a consumer, you might get those little sales in between.
So how would that work? Would that be like would that be like, would you like build would that be to do with AI? Would it, like, and integrating would you?
Well, that's more. It's like predictive modelling, really. Mm-hmm. That specific example, but from the
would you make
database structure.
the rule? Would you like? Would
rules,
we? Yeah. So we
rules,
would,
and then it's
we
algorithms.
would all make the. So would we have to make the rules? As in, like between us, we would say that like. If
technically not.
No.
You can, but you don't technically have to. You can. Microsoft has out the box. I can show you. Not right now, but another day. Machine learning is a subset of AI models called Auto ML.
Okay.
And what you can do it with just an Excel spreadsheet. You can feed an Excel spreadsheet of your sales in or of your customer queries in, and it will run your data. And you say roughly, you set parameters and stuff, and it'll run your data through 50 different machine learning models.
Right. Okay.
And then spit out results, and you can weight results based on what is the most important elements of it.
Yeah.
But if you think from your data point of view, you're collecting who the data is, what they're buying, where they are, what the size of their business is. You can probably gather by the amount of different contacts you have. And all these different data points are all tags or variables. And the more variables you have, the better you can forecast, model.
And I think it's better for the customer as well, in terms of like they're only going to get information from us that's relevant to them as well, isn't it? You know, like, because there's nothing worse than buying from a business and then being spammed with a load of stuff that you're not interested in, you're never going to be interested in. That's just a waste of everybody's sort of effort. It's a waste of the business's time sending and putting all that stuff together, and it's just annoying for the consumer. So if the
sending relevant information,
and using that to the edge. So that's quite that'd be.
And same if you went on later to develop a customer portal where they could log in and see their past orders, etc. You could then use that to target them, and make it so that they log in and you're almost preempting what they want. So they're not searching, they're just like, okay, thanks, bye. Do nothing, receive an email, I know it's going to be here. At 2:15 on Tuesday, I'll sit down.
Making sure that when they walk in the shop that the product that they want's always by the till, sort of thing. Do you know,
and shops do it. Shops, we did a analysis, so not machine learning, but like data analysis and working out patterns for a shop, and they worked out they always sell more car seats when it's raining,
right? Because
people go deeper in the shop,
right? Okay,
and perhaps that's because of the placement in the shop.
Yes,
and they don't normally attract the market that buys kids' car seats.
Yes,
unless it's raining, they just need to get out of the rain for a while.
Right? Yeah. So, that'd be quite. So, marketing would be quite a good way to sort of,
it's
expand.
A good one as well, because you can prove ROI quite easily on it. Whereas
that's true.
Your like wastage from a machine and stuff, it's a lot harder over time. It become transparent, but it's a lot harder to
measure it. That's true, actually, because that's one thing as a director, when I'm like signing off sort of these projects and things, and I'm not the only director in the business. There's other directors, so I have to like justify the cost of
which
these
is
things.
Really hard to do, and it's overhauling the process of your business to a digital.
I mean, sometimes I've been sort of, I've been questioned myself by the other directors, going like, why have you spent X amount of money on this? Like, what are you getting for this? And I'm like, well, it's improving the customer service, but how do you...
And the efficiency.
The efficiency, but as you say, it's not a...
And you don't necessarily track the cost of the before. It's only really obvious when...
That's it. Yes. Well, the reason. Yes, exactly. You don't. That's very true. Actually, you don't. You wouldn't have known what it was costing you before because you didn't have the system to track it. Yeah. Whereas now you have the system to track it, so you know what it's going to cost you. So that's a very good point. Actually.
And people are naturally more optimistic, and no one writes down all the instances that have gone wrong.
Yes. Yeah. That's very true. I think we want to try and get the planning and the transport and the get customers delivery. The delivery service is a big one at the moment. The website is another thing that we're working with you guys on at the moment. We're doing trying to make it smoother for customers to buy our products online, and then that might be a good thing to go to. That would be a logical step, actually, to go from getting the website smoother to then working on the marketing and getting
you can feed back. And for example, on your website you can feed back and have a personalized banner displayed. So that's like a quicker exactly. I mean, there's other things that like
things that I'd like to do as well, which would be things to do. I want to stock control and stuff like that. I think that's another avenue that an area that could be massively improved on is getting the stock in at the right time, not holding too much stock in the yard, stock that's not selling, and that kind of thing, and making the stock when the stock needs to be made, not just making it because you've got
time.
And utilizing that kind of thing. So that will be another big project as well, I think, at some point. It's just all time really, and how long trying to do it all.
What do you think you do worse than competitors or better than competitors?
I think
especially like people bigger, like, because you're sort of punching a bit above your weight with the system and deliveries and stuff. You're appearing to be you are much slicker and smoother than
much slicker and smoother with deliveries, I think. I think the buying materials is one thing that I think could be improved on. That recycling materials and getting materials in the same area is quite tough, And I think if you could get a sort of a more regular system to ensure that you're always getting the best materials to make your product and stuff like that. I think bigger businesses have more buying power, so they have more choice because they've got more buying power and because a lot more people know about them and stuff. So trying to, make sure that the sharp sand that we're buying from the quarries and stuff is we're getting the best sharp sand, the same as the same as what a larger customer might get, and stuff like that. I mean, not saying, again, it's not, there's nothing bad in it, but it's and trying to make the yard the more efficient. And I think also as well,
there's always going to be stuff to improve, but it's a hard question.
That's a difficult question. I think like you say, the software side of things, we're definitely as you say, punching a lot higher than everybody else. And I think, just making sure that when we're screening soil, that if the weather's good, because you can't screen when the weather's bad, but when the weather's good, that we are maximizing that screener, and that the screener is, going, if we're allowed, if there's a 10-hour shift for the operator, that screener is running for 10 hours. But then there's always, it's difficult because there's always sort of things thrown at you, things break and and people don't turn up to work, and so and every business must have that problem. But I think it's like we said earlier, is you've got to look at all the
moving cogs and
keep the plates spinning, just keep every plate, and which you just got to keep. The plate that starts sort of slowing down and not spinning, you just got to go over there and give it a little spin and keep it going, and then hopefully the plates can just get faster and faster, and you just keep upgrading the plates and to a disc to a and then
have you heard the analogy of balls, like glass or rubber balls, and you're basically juggling all of them and you just can't let the glass balls drop, but if you drop a rubber ball, it's all right, and it's the glass balls that you need to systemize, because if they break and smash, it's a big problem. If a rubber ball bounces and you have to catch it 2 bounces later, that's a lot less of a problem.
Yeah, that's a good one, actually. Yeah, I quite like that.
So what are your glass balls, and how do you make sure there's 6 layers of net underneath them?
So if the server turned off, that would be a glass ball, because if the server turned off, we'd lose everything. We wouldn't be able to trade, so that would be like a glass ball. Whereas if one out of 20 drivers didn't turn up to work, that might be a rubber ball, because that's going to cause you a
ripple, but not a big.
It'll upset 4 or 5 deliveries. It won't completely stop you delivering as a company. And you can maybe cover those 4 or 5 deliveries with the other vehicles. That's quite a good one. I like that analogy.
Yeah.
Well, that's been it's really interesting, Lara, to be honest. So hopefully everyone's enjoyed the podcast and learnt a bit about sort of why Springbridge is doing software, why we're sort of investing in software development, where it's going to go in the future. obviously, if anybody's watching this and they want to get their own sort of software developed or anything, then feel free to contact Lara, Objective IT, and Chelmsford. They're very, very helpful, as you can see. And we look forward to sort of putting this together and getting this all finished and built, and keep developing it. And hopefully, you guys can all reap the benefits of it, and so can we. Really good.
Cool. Yeah.
Thanks very much for coming, Lara.
Thank you. Yeah, cheers for having me.
No problem. Cheers.